Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Book Hunting, I believe episode 3. Um, this is a video that I've had a couple of false starts on. I've recorded it 3 times already. Hopefully this one will be the one that I like enough to upload. And the reason being, subject matter is somewhat controversial, and I've kind of struggled with what path I want to take in this video. The subject of this particular hunt, which is one of my favorites, is Dr. Seuss. And if I see Dr. Seuss in the wild, if I can get it for anything like a reasonable price, I'm going to grab it. Dr. Seuss is immensely popular after decades, still has staying power long after he's passed away. And for many reasons, his work is still culturally relevant and entertaining, particularly to children. But in any event, if I do happen to come across Seuss, I'm going to get it. A few weeks ago, um, I was traveling for work, and as is my habit, I'm stopping at libraries, thrift stores, little free libraries, hunting books. And on this occasion, I was in a small public library in Narrows, Virginia. And when I came across this book, If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss, uh, real name Theodor Gisel. Um, and so, of course, I grabbed it. This library has a sale section, a very nice sale section, and $1 hardbacks, 50-cent paperbacks. So, by all means, I knew immediately I was going to get this book. As you can see, it's in fairly good condition. And checking the copyright and printing history, it is a second printing, first edition. So, certainly I grabbed it. In fact, this is the only book I've ever purchased where I argued, or at least encouraged the seller not to sell it to me. The librarian there was a very nice woman, and I brought up a stack of books, this one among them, and told her that really she should charge me more than $1 for this book. This is a fairly nice copy of a first edition of the book. Um, it's in good shape, and she can probably get more for it. But she insisted, no, it's on. We're eliminating it from our catalog. Um, you know, uh, it fair's fair. You can have it for $1. And I said, "Are you sure you don't want to keep it for the collection? It's Dr. Seuss." And she said, "No, no, no. It's been put in the sale section, so by all means, you take it." And so I did. Um, when I got it back, I did some research and found that this particular book, in the condition it's in, without a dust jacket, the original had a dust jacket, uh, could sell for as much as $300. That makes it probably the most valuable book I've ever hunted in the wild. Um, but, that was somewhat of an irrelevant factor for me. I knew this is a book I was going to keep. Um, Normally, books I hunt, or oftentimes books I hunt, are going to individuals, friends, the Hatter Bookshop in Princeton, West Virginia. I send a lot of books that way. I keep fewer and fewer books as I hunt, but this one was definitely one I was going to keep because this is one of the discontinued Seuss books. If you may not be aware, 2 years ago, actually on the doctor's birthday, March 2nd, 2022, the Seuss Enterprises, which controls the copyright and the publishing of Dr. Seuss's work, uh, discontinued publication of 6 of his books. And to think I saw it on Mulberry Street, which I have owned at one time and read. If I Ran the Zoo, which now obviously I have owned and read. Um, McElligott's Pond, which I have read but have never owned. And the 3 remaining ones I don't know that I've ever seen in person. On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, and the Cat's Quizzer. Seuss Enterprises made a statement indicating that these books portray people in ways that are, quote, harmful and wrong. So they made a decision to cease publication of them. And while I disagree with that decision. My thought is always critique rather than censor. I think it's valuable to take books or art or historical figures and have a debate about any supposed harm. Um, Educate rather than eliminate. Um, but I didn't want this video to be particularly about censorship. Um, and my thought is, if a copyright holder doesn't want to publish a book that they have the copyright to, or particularly if the author's still living and they don't wish the book to be published anymore, then it's hard for me to argue. They are the artist, or at least the artist representative, and if they don't want to continue to put it out into the world, I don't, as I said, I don't like it. I don't necessarily agree with the decision, but it's their decision to make. And it's much better than what we see more and more often in the literary world today, where a modern editor will take the works of an author, particularly an author who's passed away, and change it to match their sensibilities and their sense of offense. And this is the sort of thing that's happened most recently with Agatha Christie, Roald Dahl, Ian Fleming, and I'm sure there are certainly others. Um, but uh, particularly in the case where you have an author who's no longer with us, I think it's almost terrorism on their art to make arbitrary changes that they may or may not have approved of. Roald Dahl, particularly. Roald Dahl made some changes in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from his first draft and first publication of it to what we most likely would see in the world today. Uh, he was sensitive to some of the criticisms that people were leveling about racial attitudes portrayed in the book. And once again, if he wants to make that decision, if he made those decisions, more power to him. But in any event, I don't want to linger too much more on that, except I've reviewed the book, and I think I understand why it is that Suess Enterprise no longer wishes to publish the book. I'm sure this image right here was thought to be racially insensitive to Asians, portraying Asians in a stereotypical light. And looking a few pages more, I'm sure this was viewed as also being racially insensitive, stereotype, mocking of racial characteristics, and I would tend to agree. Um, but once again, to my mind, the solution isn't to keep this out of the world. The solution is to sit down, say, with your child who you're reading this book with, and explain to them your feelings about those images and why you might disagree with them and why you might think that they're harmful or need to be addressed. I think that's a much more mature way to handle it than just to try and eliminate it from the world and act as if it never happened. That way we get a better understanding of what Dr. Seuss, Theodor Gisel, was about, what his attitudes were. We can have an honest portrayal or picture in our minds as to what he was like. We can talk about it honestly. Um, and some would say, well, it's just a kid's book. What really is um, the big deal about ceasing publication of books like this, and particularly this particular book? However, as I was reading this, I came across something that caught my attention, and I did a little research and discovered that this book has a much more critical impact on our language than you would think, because it's probable that Dr. Seuss invented a well-used word for modern English that first appeared in this book. On this page, which of course is a flight of fancy. It's basically, to summarize the story, a young boy is going through the zoo, looking at all the animals there, and having somewhat of a flight of fancy about what kind of animals and creatures he would like to have, what he would do if he ran the zoo. In any event, he has, in his imagination, come up with several very exotic creatures that he would like to see at the zoo. Um, uh, and bring back the Anitkutch, a Preep, and a Prue, a Nurgle, there's a Nurgle, a Nerd, and a Seersucker too. Check me this. A nerd. Not what we would think of as a stereotypical nerd in the modern age, but a nerd indeed. And so I thought, could that be the first time the word has ever been published? And apparently so. Dr. Seuss invented the nerd. And think of of the literature, of the movies, of the TV, um, that that came because of that word. Um, I myself have claimed the title many, many times, but Dr. Seuss invented that word. And if we don't have this book and we don't appreciate this book, then we can't appreciate the contribution that Seuss made to our culture and our literature and even our language. So once again, very glad I have this one. This one isn't going anywhere. This one's staying with me for the foreseeable future, and I'll probably read it again and share it with anybody else who wants to read it. But no, I'm afraid this one's a keeper. Thank you very much.